Seriously.
On this episode of Seriously, we're going to talk about some of the things you might want to consider when you're going for a road bike ride. Whether this is your first ride or maybe whether you're taking your riding to a little bit longer distances, there's some few things that we've learned from riding that we'd like to share with you.
Our first one is going to be the yellow line. You, for no reason, should ever cross the yellow line. In fact, you should always stay as far right on the road as possible.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be hazards and you might need to move to the left a little bit, but I've seen people riding far left or even riding in big spread out groups. You need to stay to the right of the road for courtesy for other cyclists, for other motorists, and just general safety. In addition to safety, I know some people have tried to debate this or want to talk about the reasons, but it's very clear to me you want to wear a helmet. If you're going to go for a long ride, if you're going to be out there with other vehicles and bikes, I've had a spill where I know a helmet has helped protect me. I'm going to always recommend that you wear a helmet, period.
The other one is to review the route. Where are you going? Where are those water stops? Where are the bike shops that in case you get a flat or some crazy mechanical that you can't fix, where can you go to fix that? Where are the food stops? You want to make sure where you are going is safe as well. So where are those busy roads that you're going to try to avoid? Where are the bike trails that you can hop onto?
Yeah, and you might want to plan those stops within a reasonable distance for you. Maybe that's an hour, maybe that's a half an hour, maybe it's 2 hours, all depending on your experience and the distance. But you know, heat and weather can affect that as well. I know when it's hotter, I drink a lot more water. In addition to that, you know, one of the reasons I enjoy cycling is I love to see scenic views. I love to go to new places, but there's definitely a very big need to look at where you're going. Look up and don't look down at your computer. I know on Kevin's Skills Ride, where he teaches you how to ride a bicycle in a group, which is something we'll cover in another video, I looked down at my computer way too much and it wasn't safe. But even if you're riding by yourself, you want to pay attention to hazards. You want to make sure that nothing jumps out in front of you. And so it's very important that you get used to just looking up and paying attention.
And when it comes to paying attention, you want to cover your brakes because, like you said, there might be a pothole or there might be a hazard that comes up and it might require you to brake incredibly quickly. So if you have your hands in the center of the bars, you're going to have to take that time to go to your brakes and quickly stop, when in fact you should just always be covering your brakes no matter what.
Yeah, I had a deer pop out of me on a ride, and had I not had my brakes covered, I probably would have hit that deer, and that could have caused some serious injuries. So yeah, absolutely. In addition to covering your brakes, you want to make sure that you are seen by other cars, by other cyclists, by people. You know, certain bike trails, you've got families with dogs on leashes and they've got kids in little strollers. So there's lots of things out there and lots of reasons to be seen. I use a bright flashing light in the front and a bright flashing red light to the rear. I've seen some people that have little faint lights, and I recommend getting as bright of light as you can. When you put on the flash option, typically the batteries last longer. When I do 4-hour training rides, I have them, as long as they're charged up when I start, they go the entire time. So yes, lights be seen.
Another thing is know your limits. How far can you go? Is that 10 miles, 50 miles, 100 miles, whatever it may be? Know the distance and what effort you can do that distance in, because you don't want to end up being in the middle of nowhere and saying, I can't go any farther. I need to call an Uber. Oh, I don't have cell service. What do I do? So make sure you know that limit.
Yeah, I mean, my first ride was probably about 8 miles, and you know, just going to 12 or 20 miles as the next limits were, that was a significant increase, but you do need to know your limits, at least try to understand them. Now, when you're out there, one of the things that will definitely help you extend that limit is making sure that you eat and drink, but you need to do those things safely. You know, I've learned through many, many years of practice to keep my hands on the drops or the hoods and cover the brakes while I eat and drink something. But it is not the most stable position. More stable is the hand on the top of the bar near the stem is more stable, but you can't cover your brakes. So I recommend making sure that you do that. I also, in the 3 pockets that are typically in the rear jersey, I put the things I'm going to eat the most often in the far right, things I may eat later on in the center, and I keep my cell phone, which I recommend having, in the other left side. But you know, if you need to, stop. If you're not used to it, stop and eat. There's nothing wrong with taking a break, right?
Another thing is to inspect your tires and brakes. You don't want to end up having a tire just randomly blow up because you didn't look at it. You may have had a gash there in the beginning that you could have easily fixed in the beginning. You don't want to end up having some sort of mechanical that you could have fixed at the beginning of the ride.
Yeah. Speaking of which, if you're going to be taking your wheels on and off like I do when I transport my bike somewhere, you need to make sure your quick releases are on nice and snug. It's really hard to talk about that on the camera how hard, but you want to feel some good resistance. And if you don't know, go to your local bike shop and ask them what levels you're going to use to tighten that up so that it's nice and secure.
Another thing that you want to make sure is that you have a flat repair kit or tools or saddlebags. These are sort of all common things that you should have. You want to have a saddlebag that requires stuff for you to change a flat, for you to change your tire in case your tire has a hole in it. You just want to make sure you have these tools that you're needed in case of a mechanical.
Yeah, and you need some way to inflate that tire, whether that's a CO2 pump or a hand pump. Those things are important. In fact, if you have trouble on the road, there are some basic adjustments you can do with little to no tools that can keep you going on your ride or at least get you back home if you need to.
You want to make sure your brakes are adjusted. If you're traveling and you're taking off your wheels and everything or putting on different wheels, you might realize that your brakes aren't being fully, or they might not even work. So they might not stop. This can be easily changed by a barrel adjuster. On most bikes they have them, so you can just quickly adjust them to stop or just continue to ride. I suggest you stop because it's the safest.
Yeah, and if your rear derailleur isn't shifting, just like the barrel adjuster for the brakes, it's up and down, the rear derailleur, if you turn it counterclockwise, it lengthens the screw out of the housing and tightens the cable. This will help the cable have enough tension to shift the bike the rear derailleur up. And if it's not shifting down, you need to turn it clockwise, decrease that distance or the tension on the cable, and it will then shift down for you.
Now I know there's some confusion. Can you explain shifting up and down? Is shifting down into an easier gear?
Yes, so shifting down would be to an easier gear, but you actually want the chain to go up into the bigger sprocket, so the cable needs more tension.
Got it. Another thing that you want to do is in case your chain becomes derailed, you want to make sure that you know how to put it back on. This might be tricky if you have some sort of chain guard or something blocking it. There's a trick that you can do is if you're in the forest or something and you have a stick, you can take a stick, put it between the chain and the ring that you're trying to put it on and flip it back onto it. That way your hands or your gloves don't get really greasy.
Yeah, and that can make a real mess, especially if you try to eat afterwards.
Yeah.
Right? Anyhow, we hope that some of these things help you plan and prepare for your first road ride or maybe extending your ride. We'll be doing some more videos that go more in depth on some of the things like maintenance and eating and different things on the bike. But we thank you for joining us and we hope that you stay tuned. Seriously.